Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel. So I'll start with Christophe. Christophe Mallet is the CEO and the co-founder of Bodyswaps, an innovative soft skills training platform used by over 300 institutions to help learners build confidence and communication skills for real-world, high-stakes situations. Bodyswaps supports learners across further and higher education and professional training. Christophe was born in Paris and has worked at XR since 2015 and co-founded Bodyswaps in 2019. He's a techno-optimist when it comes to AI and education and recognized voice in this space. And he also makes a great guacamole, apparently. So ask him about that afterwards. We have Elpiniki Smith, a senior learning technologist at UA92 with 2 decades of experience in higher education. She plays a pivotal role in shaping digital education with a particular focus on the thoughtful adoption and effective implementation of learning technologies. She works closely with the academic teams to create inclusive learning experiences that support employability and real-world skills development. Next, we have Laura Hutchings. As an academic with over 15 years experience in both further and higher education, she's the digital lead for Education and Humanities and provides strategic leadership for digital practice across faculty, guiding the development and implementation of digital strategy and supporting institutional priorities around digital innovation in teaching and learning. Laura works closely with both academic and professional services and colleagues to build staff capability, embed effective digital practice, and lead initiatives that enhance the student experience in teaching and learning. And last but not least, we have Rachel Jones, who's the Assistant Principal for MIS, IT and Student Services at Walsall College. Rachel has over 20 plus years in FE, sector leadership and digital management information and services for students. And with that, I'm going to pass across to Christophe.
Great, thanks a lot. Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? All right, I hope you can cope with the French accent. Am I going to get slide? Yes, brilliant. So, Bodyswaps, what a strange name, right? Some people ask me if it's an homage to like Freaky Friday and those types of movies, but I thought I would start by telling you the origin story of Bodyswaps. So, I'm going to take us back to 2008. So I was in Paris in a business school, and this was the day my first ever work experience finished. So I was a suited up business consultant in one of those big companies in one of those towers, and I was meeting my N+2, whom I had never met, who was going to give me my final feedback. And obviously I was, a bit scared and apprehensive. And it kind of went like this. He said, Chris, you're okay smart, so we are going to offer you a position when you graduate in a year from now. But because you stutter, we're not going to put you in front of clients, and don't expect to grow too fast in that career. So fantastic soft skills right there. And that completely crushed my confidence. I stopped socializing for a while. I would not pick up the phone. And yeah, it was quite bad. And then a year later, back at the business school, I signed up randomly without really looking at it for a weekend seminar that we had to do called Managing Crisis. And I arrive in that room. This is AI because I don't have a photo from then, but I arrive in that room and it's like 12 chairs in a semicircle. Teacher comes in, sneakers, dreadlocks, very suave, and I'm like, what is happening here? This is not my typical class at this posh business school that I was in. And the teacher goes, welcome to the improv theater class, which was about entering in a nightmare, right? So I wanted to leave the room, but I could not because my grades were bad. And I realized quite quickly that you can't do that half-assed, right? You don't half improv. So I went full on for it. The very first exercise was going on the lectern in the middle of the room, 2 people, one doing a speech in a gibberish language, the other one translating that speech in French sentence by sentence. That was the first exercise. And the entirety of the 2 days was like this. And it was by far the best, most transformative, most fun learning experience I've ever had. And at the end of it, I regained the confidence that was crushed so badly because I realized, okay, I can do this. Now, put that to the side and fast forward about 10 years. My co-founder Julia and I are working in virtual reality. We have a marketing agency, and we're also teaching at various universities and geeking out on research that's coming out of many places on virtual embodiment and behavioral change. So when you have a body in virtual reality that may or may not look like you, what happens to your behavior in that experience, but also outside of that experience, consciously and subconsciously. And there was one study in particular that really blew our minds, and that's Mel Slater in 2016. So he worked with women, 20 women, who were suffering from severe depression and mental health crisis, and he put each of those women in a VR experience in which they would embody an avatar that looked more or less like themselves. So you can see in figure B over there, there's a mirror. You can see a little bit of a mirror on the corner. So you see yourself in the mirror. And in that experience, there's a little girl crying. This is 2016, so there's no AI, just a little girl crying. What they ask the patients to do is to speak for 90 seconds to that little girl and say kind words, reassuring words, right? Regardless of what you say to the girl, she stops crying after a minute and a half. But what happens after a minute and a half is, because the voice had been recorded by the microphone of the headset and the body movements through the suit that she's wearing, you see the little balls on the suit, it's the same technology to do like a Planet of the Apes or Gollum, right? They are able to put the patient in the perspective of the little girl, travel back in time 90 seconds, and essentially be at the receiving end of those words by an avatar that looks like them, moves like them, sounds like them. Essentially, the magic of the idea is creating an outsourcing circuit where you're going to give empathy to yourself. And the thing is that the reduction in clinical symptoms of depression was greater for the patient who did 3 times 8 minutes in that experience than for those who did 3 times 1 hour of CBT. So very powerful stuff. And then in 2019, we were approached by Sage, the publishers in education, and they said, we want to explore virtual reality to train nurses in psychiatry around suicide. And we thought back of that Mel Slater experiment, but also I thought back about my experience in 2008, where 2 days of that kind of practice, safe practice, really changed my life. But I'm a privileged guy. I was in a business school. I had an improv theater. And the question was, well, can we build a machine for the level of creation of confidence that I had? Can you scale the acquisition of empathy and confidence? And so that's what we've been trying to do. So that first Bodyswaps ever was in 2019, and it's just flipping the experience on its head. So you're not the patient talking to a little girl. You are the mental health nurse listening to a suicidal patient, then providing your advice to that patient, and then swapping to watch yourself. How do I come across when I'm telling someone some things that could or not save their life? So that was the first experience from Bodyswaps. And now I want to show you a very quick video that we received from Owen Bettridge, who's a SEND student at Creating Tomorrow College. We received that just before Christmas, and that was one of the best presents I've ever had. Let's go.
I truly believe that when technology is designed with one purpose, to help people, it can change lives. Tools like Bodyswaps, VR headsets, and AI aren't just gadgets or fads. They're stabilizers, they're stepping stones, and they can help us overcome challenges and unlock our potential. Thank you for listening.
Just a bit of AI at the end, but that's the biggest smile I've ever seen. And in that, Owen tells his story, and he always had learning difficulties, and job interviews were the one thing that freaked him out. And a few months later, he's on the stage speaking to 500 adults in a room. So it's quite impressive. Now today, we work with over 300 institutions, 200,000 learners. So hopefully we're really kind of on our way to building that machine for confidence, and hopefully offering a lot of people like Oren the same kind of boost and life-changing learning experience that I had all those years ago. Now, on to our work with JISC. So we just started a program in February which is called Get Interview Ready, or the interview project. So we have 22 institutions enrolled. There's been over 1,000 sessions so far. And more specifically, this program was about giving those institutions access to a pathway on Bodyswaps that CPD accredited around preparing their students for job interviews. But we gave them access to the entire platform. Now, educators being educators, this is what happens. The top 3 modules are not in the job interview pathway, right? They took the platform and they found other things to do. And interestingly enough, the most used modules in there were around anti-racism training. So that was quite interesting. It's just like we're 5 weeks into the program, so it's really the beginning. That might change. Now, the other aspect, I talked a lot about VR because that's where we came from, but the other aspect is the deployment. What devices are people using to deploy? And there's a trade-off. If you do the experience in VR, and you can try it at the Bodyswaps booth over there, you have maximum immersion, you are embodied. So the research that we've done, and independent research, shows that the memorability and levels of engagement are best in virtual reality. It's quite obvious. But obviously, it's not easy for institutions to deploy in VR and to scale. And so what you see here in that program, it's quite interesting, is it's only so Quest would be VR. So you have 11% in virtual reality. The rest is in 2D, where convenience, letting your learners do experiential homework, practice in their own time, so maximizing psychological safety and scalability over immersion. There's no right or wrong, it's entirely your choice, but I thought it was interesting to show you how it's going. And now, just a little bit of a shout out. These are the top 5 institutions on the program so far. The number 1 institution will get a special prize that I've been told I cannot reveal you what it is, but there will be one. So that's where we are right now with that program. And that's it for the presentation. I didn't talk too much. I didn't hard sell too much. Now we are going to go into the panel with our 3 fantastic speakers. I'm not going to repeat the intro. But before that, I wanted to do a little bit of a setting the scene. So we're going to talk we don't have a title slide. Interesting. We're going to talk about AI and soft skills, and can we build human skills with AI? And there's 2, let's say, competing views on this. The first one is to say, so we're talking about using AI to build human skills to stay relevant in the age of AI, which sounds on the surface maybe a little bit wrong. And you could argue that the more AI we use, the less human we become. And that AI presents a risk of, I've read that the other day, of de-skilling learners, right? They would lean on AI like a cognitive crutch and progressively lose their skills. Then you have the other opinion, which is that actually AI can be a partner, the best partner that we've ever had to practice conversation safely before you have them in the real world. So there's this big debate raging. But I think today, rather than talking in broad terms, we can look more at your experiences. So you've been on a program for a few weeks. Students, and in some cases staff, have tried a platform. And so what happens actually with students and staff when they do that? Do they learn? Do they not learn? What works? What doesn't work? What's promising? What's dangerous? And what would you tell people in the audience if they want to start? So that's about 20 questions I just fired at you right now. We're going to start with one, and Rachel, because we had a discussion yesterday. Why are soft skills important, but also so important right now?
I think mainly because people and young people need to have that interaction, as we talked about. There's so much on their phones and some of those sorts of things, that actually having the soft skills and the skills that we needed for the world of work, particularly in an AI generation, is going to be critical for them to be able to navigate that changing pathway of work.
Do you want to expand on this? Maybe on, if you had to define the students you have today versus the students you had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what has changed both in what they need to learn, but also how ready they come to your institutions?
Yes, so for us, like Rachel said, students are relying more on technology. The way we teach has changed, the way the students are learning has changed, and it's important that we're still delivering those sessions which build on those soft skills. So we're not just teaching the knowledge, but we're teaching how to apply that knowledge as well.
And what would happen if you didn't? If you didn't bring soft skills from the margins to the center?
So as a course of inaction, potentially we'd have students who have the knowledge but wouldn't be able to apply it to real world situations, potentially skills gaps with employability, and confidence levels may decrease with our students.
If I may add to that.
Absolutely.
So we are dealing with Generation Z, and this is a generation that we do call digital natives, not in the sense that they can use every technology that you throw at them, but they have grown to use those tools in a different way that probably my generation would use them. So they've moved from phone calls to text, from text to emojis. They have a different way of communicating. So those traditional skills, if you like, might be deteriorating a bit. So what we really need is for those communication skills, for our students to practice those. UA92, and I know lots of people might not have heard of us, but we have a program called the 92 program, which was a principle set out by our co-founder, Gary Neville. So we teach those skills as part of every module. But what we say is, your course will get you the job interview, the 92 program will get you the job. But what I want to add to this is that soft skills will keep you in that job. Because there is no job that doesn't require good communication skills, active listening, being able to take feedback. So this is what's going to keep you in the job.
And in terms of teaching those skills, what are you, like pre-platforms, pre-AI, like how are you doing this and what works and what doesn't?
Shall I go ahead?
Yeah.
Yes. So for us, as I mentioned, we had the 92 program, which is brilliant and it is applied everywhere. But sometimes delivery is inconsistent. Sometimes you might have students that need to practice more. They need to practice more their communication. And I'm going to mention neurodivergent students as well, who might not be comfortable practicing those skills in a real life setting. So something like Bodyswaps gives them the capability to practice and make mistakes in a safe environment. So they're not being judged by how they perform, but they just practice and practice until they get better at it.
So if I sum up, there's limitations of current provision of soft skills training that you pointed at. One is every student is different, and some need more practice or more support than others. And the other one is potentially inconsistency in learning experience coming from just who the tutors are and experts. Do you have any other challenges you want to add?
Yeah. Similarly, with us, we see a difference per cohort. So traditionally, we may have used group presentations, debates, things that get students to work together. However, this can differ with cohort. It can also differ on subject area as well, depending on what the subject area is. Most recently at UWTSD, we have been exploring the use of our immersive facilities, so VR headsets, and our immersive room to practice those soft skills more. Bodyswaps has further complemented that because it's brought that AI-powered platform with it, which has allowed us to start to standardize soft skills and measure student soft skills as well.
So I have a follow-up question to this is, first, would you agree that AI platforms like Bodyswaps are not here to replace the human mock?
Absolutely, yeah.
If you have to draw a timeline for a student, where would you place the use of AI rehearsal? Is it, do you do mock, AI mock? Do you do AI mock AI? Like how does it work best?
I think for us it depends on the group of students and the group of students you're going with. We've got a variety of students and we've used it with sort of low level, level 1, we've used it and trialed it with some SEND, we've used it with some ESOL students. And then equally, we've used it with unemployed adult students. And so, depending on their course, the adult students are very keen to get into the world of work. So we see a lot of intensive use with those students and really engaging with it because they want to practice their interviews, ready for an interview of a job in 3, 4, 6 weeks' time. With some of the level ones have been somewhat interesting with regard to their understanding of language, particularly at times within there, but the fact in the ability that we can change that language and adapt that language within the system and put scripts in to try and change that language, and equally with level 3, prepping for university. So I think it depends on the destination of the learner and what you've got in that sort of careers programme, but the sort of whole idea, particularly in FE, around sort of statutory duty for careers education and mock interviews and preparing them, whether that's their work experience during the course. So some bits that they're comfortable speaking in class at the start of their course, like say mock interviews for work experience, and then potentially interviews for university or for the world of work, depends on what their destination needs to be.
Was there a particular moment, like an individual story, where you saw a student or staff and you said, actually this could work? Like, or any anecdote of something you've heard back from your learners?
Yeah, for us, because we had access to the whole platform and not just the interview modules, I decided to create a cultural awareness pathway class, which I showed to our senior leadership team because I felt that it was a really, really good platform to practice skills on, bias and race and all of those things. So they had a chance to trial it first, and then we had a meeting. And one of the members of the leadership team said, I think this is brilliant because I can practice in a safe environment and I'm not worried about what AI is going to think of me if I've said the wrong thing. And I think that is when the penny dropped, if you like. You go, oh yeah, that is actually how we can make our students comfortable and confident in developing those skills. So even, it's not just something that you can use for your students, it's something that you can use for your staff as well. And at UA92, we think it's so good. We made it a mandatory class for all our staff to take the cultural awareness course.
Interesting. So psychological safety is not just reserved for students, it's also staff that need it.
And I think there's the ability, particularly with staff, sort of with some of the bits we talked about generational change, there's sort of things around millennials being middle managers and sort of being reluctant to have difficult conversations and some of those things. So the ability that people could have it as sort of a virtual coach to practice some of those difficult conversations, have that feedback, try that, gives further opportunities, but equally within delivering difficult content or things that people will be uncomfortable with, gives you that route to give them some psychological safety within delivery.
It's the same for us. So we've got a lot of trainee teachers who may lack confidence in certain areas. There's potentially certain classroom situations where they may feel uneasy about approaching, first of all, so working with students who are neurodiverse, working with pupils with challenging behaviour, so to be able to mock up a scenario where they can safely explore that scenario and get feedback from lecturers has been really worth it in our eyes, because we're able to provide them with that safe space where they get the feedback from as well.
So speaking of staff, you obviously you're on this stage because you are champions and believers, and we know we work with a lot of educators who are pretty much like, that are considered to be part of the Bodyswaps team, because we are trying with them to convince the rest of faculty and senior leadership. And so do you have any advice or any stories to share with the audience on maybe some pushback that you've had and how you managed to turn that around?
So
without naming any names?
No, so for us at UWTSD, it's been really positive. There hasn't necessarily been that pushback. It started in the Institute of Education and Humanities, and the word spread, and staff were keen to jump on board, so we've had use cases in business, events, hospitality, right across the board, public services. So we haven't had that pushback. We've had possibly that little bit of reluctance when it comes to technology, but then when staff have seen how easy the platform is to use and how easy it is to embed in modules, it's been quite a good for staff to jump on board there.
And we haven't seen any reluctance from staff. It's more been from, as I mentioned, sort of level 1 learners. They didn't understand the concept of grounding within the original scenarios. And I think really when you're trying to embed it, and one of the tips is really being able to convey the students just to why and why they're doing it. Obviously with our level 1 students, they are possibly have had bad experiences in school, potentially haven't got their GCSEs and some of those things, and in reality, in many cases, are furthest away from the job market. So I think some of those about that level of engagement, they engage, but then they disengage. And I think it's really critical when you're embedding it to make sure that students understand the why. Fantastic results, as I said, with the adults and the level 3s, but the level 1s, it's really that why. So why is it relevant to me now? Why do I need to do it now? And some of those sorts of things. And it's really about trying to challenge and give them that safe space, given their experiences potentially in school previously.
And I know we're talking about getting students interview ready, but it's not just about interviews, it's about presentations and building confidence as well. So this is how we present it to our level 4s, because interviews seem a lifetime away, but when you have a group project, active listening, when you have a presentation, how do you calm your nerves before you start your presentation? So it's all of those skills that you can start building up until you go to that stage of the interview.
And those skills, are they kind of like black and white, mentioned in the curriculum and assessed, or do you feel that it's still at the institution level being almost like ahead of the curve and realizing that in the world of AI, it's almost all that's left? What's your perspective on where the industry should go as a whole when it comes to human skills and the curriculum and all that?
I think those skills need to align with current opportunities, and for us it depends on where our graduates are going. Obviously AI being a big part of this and embedding AI into our teaching and learning, but also deepening that learning context as well. So go back to ensuring that they haven't just got the knowledge from the AI, but fully understand and are able to apply that to any given situation. And for us as academics, as lecturers, being able to facilitate that further.
Mm-hmm. So there's probably two extremes because this comes down to the role of the educator in this world, and there's probably two extremes that we don't want to talk about because as any extreme we should not. One is teachers are dead, AI is going to completely replace them, and the other one is AI is useless, we should teach as we always have. Somewhere in the middle lies the truth. What's your definition of the truth? What's the new role of the educator in this world? And not just in Bodyswaps, the whole how should an educator use AI, not use AI?
I'm happy.
Yeah, I'll add.
So yes, AI is big in our teaching and learning. It's coming in, there's no avoiding it. However, the role of the educator will never go away, and going back to my previous point, it's up to us as educators to facilitate that learning, so to take AI with both hands, embed it, and use it in a way that is beneficial to our students.
I'll add to this. There is so much knowledge out there now. I'm sure you could do a whole degree watching YouTube videos on a subject that's of interest to you, and AI could complement that. But that's not what it is about. That's not what education is about. That's not what educators are about. So it's about showing those skills to the students, critical thinking, why this bit of information is correct and right, and why you shouldn't be listening to this source of information. It's about guiding them, because we're talking about young people, to assess their own skills in communication and show them what is the best way of doing things. So for that, you do need a human in the loop, if you like. So I wouldn't say AI would replace the educator, but it is a really excellent tool that can help educators personalize learning and give those skills to the students.
Okay, so there's one role of the educator is the curation element. One role is the ethical element. Is there anything else that you would add as a new hat for the educator?
I think there's also a sort of dichotomy about AI could potentially level up the playing field with individual learners, of allowing them to practice more, removing some of those barriers that are potentially there. But equally, unless we use it ethically with the role of the teacher in being able to know those learners, being able to ensure that they've applied it correctly and some of those sorts of things. And I can think of an example with sort of a friend's daughter who is on the spectrum, but she learns by copying. She's high-performing autistic. And so we do need to always be careful that if they're using these tools, that they're not necessarily just copying, that actually they are learning and understanding within them. And so there are particular barriers that the role of the teacher becomes very important in making sure that that actually takes place and that they don't learn things without that full understanding.
Okay, that makes sense. We have like about 3 minutes before we do a Q&A, so prepare your questions in your heads. But in the meantime, I have a lightning round. So it's like a 1 or 2 words answer. Okay, the first question is, if you had to rank all the soft skills, what's the king of queen or of soft skills for you?
So for me, it would be communication, as it forms the basis of every human interaction.
Okay.
I agree, communication is king. Without communication, you fail. You can't give feedback, take feedback, work on a project with others, so yeah.
Because you just mentioned critical thinking.
Yes.
You still pick communication over critical thinking.
Communication, still communication, because, yeah, as I said, I think without communication, if you can't communicate what critical thinking is.
I'm going to push you a little bit. I think communication is a bit of a cop-out because it's so much, right? So within communication, like think about your students. Like, what's the one thing where you're like, oh my God, they really can't do X?
Active listening, then.
Active
I will say
listening?
that, because that is something I feel a lot of people lack nowadays. We're all very keen to express our thoughts and our feelings, but not always very good at listening to a situation and understanding what the other person is trying to communicate.
Okay, active listening. Satisfactory answer. I'm going to go back to you now.
Okay, so I think one of the things that's a critical sort of skill for learners now is really going to be that attention. They're so used to a fast-paced world of being able to pay attention. And then that leads into resilience, that the world is changing so quickly that allowing them to adapt and be resilient and have those safe spaces are going to be critical for them to navigate the new world in whatever the new world may be.
Do you want to narrow down your answer now?
Yeah, so with, like I said, communication, I'm still standing by that. Mm-hmm. But yes, with active listening and that resiliency, bringing that in.
So it's interesting. So between you mentioned like quite a few skills. What's one skill that you feel AI can probably teach better than humans the current way it's taught, and what's one skill that you think AI will never be able to teach?
So for me, I would say empathy is a skill that, yes, AI can guide us with empathy, but empathy comes from real lived experiences and real, again, that interaction. So whilst Bodyswaps can teach us empathy because we're going through that, those scenarios and we can replicate any scenarios, but for us, a lot of our students, if they are going into classrooms, into schools, a lot of that empathy comes from those lived experiences.
So empathy in the one that AI cannot teach well and won't ever. And is there one that you think AI is actually pretty good at, or immersive learning as a whole?
So I'm not going to say immersive learning, but with AI, one thing that AI would do for me better than a human would possibly be organisation and structuring things, but that's coming from quite a disorganised person.
Fair enough.
I think AI can do feedback really well to people, and perhaps deliver it in that without creating barriers within itself. Sometimes when people say things to people, they use it and they don't necessarily take it in a strange way. It gives them that sort of impartiality of that feedback, because it is just you and the machine talking to each other. But I agree, empathy is probably the one that I would be most fearful about it talking to. But I think it's really around that relationships and building, and being able to know how to build relationships will be one of the key skills that students need to have in the future for navigating this world of work.
Great.
I think AI is absolutely brilliant at being resilient, in that you can try and try and try, and it will never say, I'm tired now, just give me some space. So if you're willing to try and fail, AI will be there for you, so you can practice and practice and practice until you finally get it. So in terms of that, I think AI is much better than a human, because every human eventually kind of goes, I need a break from this. In terms of things that AI can't teach well, I think it's so rapidly evolving. I don't think there will be a lot of things that it can't teach, but I will agree that empathy, because sometimes it's something that you can't communicate with words, and it has to do with body language or just a look. And at the moment, that is not something that AI can do quite well.
Fair enough. Great. Thanks. We have 7 minutes for questions from the audience, if there are any questions, showing off your human skills and curiosity.
So we do have the Slido up, so submit your questions via that, please. We do already have some in, so thank you to those who've submitted, both online and in the room. Hopefully a nice question to warm you up. So how do we motivate young students and staff to want to build these soft skills, more than recognizing the need, but genuine interest to develop these skills?
So I think we've got to make it engaging. We've got to make it look appealing, look attractive. Like I said, with our immersive environments, the development of soft skills are coming naturally in those immersive environments. Like I said, through escape rooms, through gamified learning on headsets, but through Bodyswaps. So it's making that look appealing, but obviously then taking that step further and linking it to why it's purposeful for them. So for me, it would be engagement and linking it to purpose.
For me, if I may add, it's embedding it in the curriculum, like you have to do with any technology. It has to be thought about beforehand. So as I mentioned before, those skills, if they have a presentation, you can embed it in that so they understand what the value is in for them. So what's in it for me is the student, is what they're asking. And if you say, well, actually, this will help you with your presentation skills, then they can relate to that. If we refer to something that is outside of their sphere, then we're never going to convince them. And I think that's the same with any technology. So embed it and explain what it is in a real life situation, so a presentation or group work or something like that.
I think it depends on the sector. So obviously, if you're talking about a plumber or electrician, then it's going to be dealing with customers, and how do you deal with customers, or how do you deal with the complaints, or some of those things. You talked earlier about starting in the healthcare sector. There's really good examples, but being able to really relate it to what will happen and be useful to them as an individual. So it's that why question again.
Great, thank you. One for Christophe here. So, does Bodyswaps feedback address the general language skills and help to drop the use of colloquialisms, if I can say the word, that are common in younger student speech?
And the short answer is no. But there are a number of AI apps and immersive learning apps that look specifically at language. So you can, the way we say, when you design a role play, you can define your own assessment criteria So you could say one assessment criteria is use of jargon or colloquialism, but I wouldn't say that it's the primary use for the application.
Great. Thank you very much. I did practice that word and I still couldn't say it, so I need to practice more with Bodyswaps maybe. It's an interesting question. So can over-reliance on safe environment rehearsal technologies negatively affect students' ability to think on their feet? And how should institutions address this? Now, it's quite early in the sort of trials with Bodyswaps specifically, but is this something that you...
Yeah, I think for us, what we've planned to do is be able to introduce it so that it's a safe space for students to practice first, but you can't, it's a scaffolding. You can't actually go into it thinking that learners aren't going to go and present or do a Dragon's Den or go and work with a real careers advisor or a real employer. They've got to have those ability skills to practice those. So it's a scaffolding and giving them an opportunity. Like I say, with our statutory duty, we've got to interview or do mock interviews for every learner going to work experience. Well, have we all got enough resources to be able to do that? So this gives us the opportunity for learners to all practice before they then go and have potentially an interview with an employer or some of those sorts of things through those opportunities.
Yeah, just to add an anecdote to this. So, you know, I had that slide about SAGE and the nurses in psychiatry. And one of the reasons why we did that project is they told us, we have students in psychiatry, they get all the knowledge, they download the knowledge in the classroom, and then they start their placement, and their tutors or supervisors have no time to actually, you know, like be behind them. So they are roaming the offices of the corridors of hospitals with patients in mega distress, suicidal patients, and it's terrifying for the students, and B, this is very, very high stakes, and you don't want to, you know, learn by doing when you're talking to a suicidal person. There's just too much at stake. So pedagogically speaking, there is between the classroom and competency, there is a missing block, and that block is called experience normally, and you're acquiring very slowly over years, and you make some mistakes. But I think now we have the technology to do without having to wait years of mistakes to build experience. You can build experience a little bit faster, build the confidence, so that you arrive in the real world just a little bit more prepared and safe for yourself and those around you. And I believe we are at time, are we? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you all for coming.
Very much.